All right, I'm going to get started because we're going to try to get a lot into this Sunday school, and it's not starting off on a great note. The laptop is in the middle of an update, so I'm going to try to go without the slides. So Jacob's away. He's going to be away next week also. He asked me to fill in, and it's always a problem when I'm trying to fill in for somebody because I have kind of like a limited time. I can't, overflow to the next week and carry it on if someone's going to show up next week and you've got to give up the podium. So I'm trying to cram as much as I can and hopefully I can get this completed. So I'm going to kind of do something a little bit different. Jacob's been doing a study on Habakkuk, and I'm going to do something totally different, as Monty Python would say. So this past week kind of has been the inspiration. At the beginning of the week, there was a news announcement that affected a couple leaders, let's say, in Palestine and in Israel. The International Criminal Court out of The Hague this past week issued or suggested issuing warrants of arrest for war crimes and crimes against humanity against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and also several leaders of Hamas. The court's prosecutor said in a statement that he was applying for arrest warrants because he had reasonable grounds to believe that they all, three chief leaders in Hamas and also Netanyahu, that they were responsible for war crimes. All this is the result of the Hamas-led attack on October 7th in Israel, which resulted in the taking of at least 245 hostages. So this is a suggestion that hasn't actually been endorsed by the criminal court. We'll see where this goes. But I wanted to use that as a springboard and just bring up the topic of the what's going on in the Middle East today. And I thought we would try to start out reading from the scriptures, Ezekiel 37, which I would normally have up on the screen. So I'm going to ask somebody, this is the very well-known, hopefully well-known, passage about the dry bones. And the prophet Ezekiel sees a valley full of dry bones. I'm bringing it up on my phone so I can read it. So the hand of Yahweh was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of Yahweh and set me down in the middle of the valley. And it was full of bones, and he caused me to pass among them all around, and behold, there were very many on the surface of the valley. And behold, they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord Yahweh, you know. Then he said to me, Prophesy over these bones and tell them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. This is what the Lord Yahweh says to these bones. Behold, I will cause spirit to enter into you, and you will live. I will put sinews on you, and I will bring up flesh on you, and cover you with skin, and put spirit in you, and you will live, and you will know that I am Yahweh. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise. And behold, a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to its bone. And I looked, and behold, there were sinews on them, and flesh grew upon them. The skin covered them over, but there was no spirit in them. Then he said to me, Prophesy to the spirit, prophesy, son of man, and tell the spirit, this is what the Lord Yahweh says. Come from the four winds, O spirit, and breathe on these slain so that they come to life. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the spirit came into them. And they came to life and stood up upon their feet, an exceedingly great army. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, Our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are cut off completely. Therefore prophesy and tell them, this is what the Lord Yahweh says. Behold, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves, O my people, and I will bring you into the land of Israel. And you will know that I am Yahweh when I have opened your graves and caused you to come up out of your graves, O my people. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will place you in your own land. Then you will know that I, Yahweh, have spoken it and have done it, says Yahweh. The word of Yahweh came again to me, saying, You, son of man, take one stick and write on it for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions, Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. Then join them for yourself one to another into one stick, so that they become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, will you not show us what you mean by these? Tell them, this is what the Lord Yahweh says, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph that is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I will put them with it, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they will be one in my hand. The sticks on which you will write will be in your hand before their eyes. Say to them, this is what the Lord Yahweh says, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the nations where they have gone, and I will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king to them all, and they will no longer be two nations, nor will they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all, nor will they defile themselves anymore with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions, but I will save them out of all the places in which they have lived and in which they have sinned, and I will cleanse them. Then they will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them, and they all will have one shepherd. They will also walk in my ordinances and observe my statutes to do them. They will live in the land that I have given to Jacob, my servant, in which your fathers lived, and they will live in it, they and their children and their children's children forever. And David, my servant, will be their ruler forever. So I'm going to stop right there as the first 25 verses. And hopefully you can see how relevant that is to what's going on in the Middle East today. The very fact that there is a conflict in the Middle East is confirmation that God has fulfilled or is fulfilling what we have just read. So I wanted to introduce this morning's class with Ezekiel 37 by reminding us of the restoration of the children of Israel into their own homeland, the land that was promised to Jacob. There had been thoughts about trying to return, have the Jews return to other nations. There have been plans like Peru or Brazil or other places, but Ezekiel 37 made it very clear it was going to be the land which was promised to Jacob. So let me try to get caught up here. So this was from the New York Times. This was what I was referring to at the beginning of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. So that's where I started. I'm going to pass over to Ezekiel 37 because we just read it. And what I wanted to point out that, we are today, it was kind of like inbred into us that the restoration of the children of Israel, it was a given, and it would be in the latter days. Now, you would think the Jewish people, although they did have this hope, they were not all on the same page with respect to the state of Israel. Within Judaism, they're not as bad as Christianity as far as the branches and subgroups, but within Judaism, there are groups, and the primary ones are up on the screen. You have Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism, Reform Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism, and Hasidic Judaism. And what's interesting is that some of these groups are opposed to the modern state of Israel. And their opposition to the political state of Israel has nothing to do with the state's secular nature. It has to do with the state's secular nature. These groups, which would be the Reformed and ultra-Orthodox, believe that only after the Messiah returns, and I underscore after the Messiah returns, will the true regathering of the Jewish people to the Holy Land take place. And they feel that any other regathering is premature and of man. And they would say that all the fighting that's taken place since Israel's statehood in 1948 is a proof that Zionism is a mistake. And again, the two groups that have been historically opposed to the formation of the Israeli state have been the Reform and the ultra-Orthodox. Now, at this point, I'm going to introduce not a Jew, but let's see. Oh, so here's a couple examples. In Reform Judaism, there's this is just kind of a snapshot back in the 19th century. Some of the things they did. It was interesting, in 1885, there was a conference in which the Reform movement stated that we consider ourselves no longer a nation, but a religious community, and we therefore expect neither a return to Palestine nor a sacrificial system under the sons of Aaron, nor the restoration of any of the laws concerning a Jewish state. So that was a Reform statement from the 19th century. Ultra-Orthodox, again, they're also opposed to the state of Israel as it exists today because it was not brought about by the Messiah. Moving forward, so this is what I was going to refer to next was Dr. Thomas in 1848 spent almost a year working on a title called Elpis Israel, and in there he made a very astute observation, and this is kind of a famous passage within the Christadelphian community. He said, "Then there is then a partial and primary restoration of the Jews before the advent of Christ, which is to serve as the nucleus or basis of future operations in the restoration of the rest of the tribes after he, the Messiah, has appeared in the kingdom. The pre-eventual colonization of Palestine will be on purely political principles, and the Jewish colonists will return in unbelief of the Messiahship of Jesus and of the truth as it is in him. They will immigrate thither as agriculturalists and traders in the hope of ultimately establishing their commonwealth, but more immediately of getting rich in silver and gold by commerce with India, and in cattle and goods by their industry at home under the efficient protection of the British power." Written in, actually the book came out in 1849. And as a remarkable observation made by John Thomas a full 100 years before the establishment of the nation of Israel. And Dr. Thomas was highlighting how the colonization of and the return of the Jewish people to Palestine would not be a religious effort, but a purely economic and political one. And this backs up what the ultra-Orthodox and the Reform branches of Judaism have been saying, or have said, and explain why they're opposed to the present state of Israel. But all these objections aside, the state of Israel does exist, and we find today in Palestine a major geopolitical problem that has no easy solutions. And this all reminds me of Zechariah 12 that talks about in the latter days, Jerusalem will become a burdensome stone to all the nations. Now, I'm going to look very briefly at Zechariah 12 as a prelude to what I want to use most of my time this morning presenting to you. So, Zechariah 12, why don't we have someone read that if we could? I need to get something to drink. My mouth's a little dry. So if we can get somebody with a mic and to read Zechariah 12 here.
The word of Yahweh concerning Israel. Thus declares Yahweh, who stretches out the heavens, founds the earth, and forms the spirit of humankind in its midst. Look, I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup of reeling for all the surrounding nations, and it will also be against Judah in the siege against Jerusalem. And then on that day I will make Jerusalem a stone weight for all the peoples. All those lifting it up will grievously hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will assemble against it. On that day, declares Yahweh, I will strike every horse with confusion, and the one riding it with madness. But over the house of Judah I will keep my eyes open, and I will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. And the clans of Judah will say to themselves, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are a strength to us through Yahweh of hosts, their God.
All right, thank you. So this is the passage, the context of the reference about Jerusalem becoming a burdensome stone to all the nations. And as it goes even beyond that, it talks about how the nations would be gathered and God would strike the nations with confusion. We can argue about how far along we are into this, whether this is yet to have even a greater fulfillment, and we're just kind of seeing the edges right now. That's really not important to me. What I wanted to do is use this as an introduction as to what we're seeing in the Middle East and the conflict that's going on and how the nations are taking positions already. You can see with the rise of anti-Semitism, how this is becoming a major issue nationally or internationally. So with that, I want to ask a question of all you. So hopefully, you know, the WCF, the Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation, they put out a lot of good resources. They recently put out a video within the last 2 weeks on the Israeli-Hamas war. Has anyone watched that, or raise your hand if you've watched it? Okay, we got one? Good, okay. So what I wanted to do this morning, it's about 20 minutes long. I want to actually play the video full length. I might cut off it toward the end. And if there's any time at the end of the video, we can have a discussion. But the video focuses on what's going on in the Middle East today. And what's interesting, it's done by Christadelphians, with Christadelphians having a discussion about the Middle East and the predicament, not only internationally, but within the community that this creates. That is, how do we respond to the violence that's going on in the Middle East and the humanitarian crisis that's going on? What position, is there any position we should take as Bible students? So give me a little bit of time to